what makes me proud to have served on this task force is that we have hopefully moved this from a rhetorical set of issues and questions to a pragmatic and principled set of recommendations that the executive branch and the legislative branch and even other countries can work on in cooperation with the United States to address one of the key questions that we have proposed. In our overview on our front page, we talk about, quote, "Today there is a growing consensus that countering the ideology that drives the extremism is a critical element in the overall effort to prevent and defeat the violence that emerges from it." I'd like to talk about, very briefly, 3 issues as it pertains to that very question. One is the perfect timing that we have in putting this report out in terms of a policy perspective. Secondly, the diagnosis of the problem that the task force proposes. What is this problem of violent ideology that results in people getting on the conveyor belt and blowing themselves up or committing violent acts of extremism against the United States and other peoples, primarily Muslims and mosques around the world? And thirdly, what are a few of our prescriptions, particularly on counter-radicalism? When we come back, first of all, then, to the perfect timing. It couldn't be more perfect than today we have the just recently confirmed new Director of National Intelligence, Dennis Blair, up on the Hill. And he is testifying before the Senate Armed Services Committee, I believe this morning. And he talks about, as he did in his confirmation hearing, some of the key threats to the United States. And he talks about some of the economic issues, economic destabilization of key countries in the world, primarily Pakistan and Afghanistan. But his second point that he brings up after the economic stability issues and the economic crisis in the world is turning the corner on violent extremism. What do we do about that from a national intelligence perspective? And here is part of his testimony that I'll read to you that corresponds directly to how we diagnose the problem on our task force. Admiral Blair says, and I quote, "The social, political, and economic integration of Western Europe's 15 to 20 million Muslims is progressing slowly, creating opportunities for extremist propagandists and recruiters. The highly diverse Muslim population in Europe already faces much higher poverty and unemployment rates than the general population, and current economic crises almost certainly will disproportionately affect the region's Muslims," unquote. He goes on to talk about European governments are undertaking a wide range of policies to promote Muslim integration and counter radicalization efforts, and he talks about a few of those countries. When we traveled to Europe last summer to talk about this problem, we certainly found that on the United States side that we were getting fairly good, making good progress on the military side, going after the leadership of Al-Qaeda and the terrorists, taking them out, keeping them on the run, taking away safe havens, as the Bush administration did in Pakistan and the Fata area, and as the Obama administration continues to do. That we're making progress on the intelligence side, sharing intelligence, finding out what Al-Qaeda, what Lashkar-e-Taiba, what different terrorist groups are up to, how they're working together, how they're destabilizing different countries in this arc of instability in the Middle East. We've been making progress in both of those two critically important areas. But in the third area, the counter-radicalization area, we have made precious little progress. And the United States cannot afford to be a GPS tracker for every disgruntled Muslim in the world that might join up with the terrorists. So we have our military strategy, we have our intelligence and law enforcement strategy, but the missing piece to counter the ideology is not there and has not been effectively practiced. So this task force traveled overseas, met with key people in Great Britain and France and the Netherlands and throughout the Middle East, met with key officials here, and talked about this issue. It came home not too long ago when the FBI confirmed that a Somalia American recently disappeared, went over to Africa, and became one of the first American suicide bombers. NPR did a national report on this, saying that there could be up to a half dozen or a dozen more people who have left America and gone to Africa. Now, I want to assure people we do not have a problem in the United States, especially as we've visited other countries that do have radicalization problems. But one of the things that this task force wanted to get at was, what can we learn from what other countries are doing, and how do we try to make sure that we prevent a problem from occurring in the United States? As we said back as early as the 9/11 Commission that Rob mentioned, how do we make sure that we're working with our Muslim community in America, where we do not have a problem, working with the community in innovative and creative ways, reaching out, not treating them as a pool of suspects, but including the Muslim community as they have been included in the American dream. How do we reach out to that Muslim community, not only with our FBI and our law enforcement community, but also with our Homeland Security and our small business and education outreach efforts? How do we continue to create opportunities for that American dream to be prosperous and alive and something within reach for everybody in our communities? So we talked at length about those issues and those challenges overseas.